Next up, we're going to talk about the heart. Does anybody remember what is the function of the heart? Yes, it's a muscular pump. It's roughly the size of your fist. It beats more than 100,000 times in a day, and roughly 2,500 gallons of blood are passed through your heart every single day. That is a lot. It beats about 72 times a minute, pumps out 5 liters of blood every minute. Now, its structure is kind of interesting. The structure consists of 3 layers of heart tissue. The first layer is the pericardium. The pericardium is where the heart resides. This is going to be sort of a thick, fibrous sac that's filled with fluid. This is going to offer protection and help reduce friction on the heart as it's beating against this outermost layer. So offers protection, reduces friction. The myocardium is going to be the next layer, going inward. So the middle layer, the myocardium, this is going to be the actual wall of the heart, mostly cardiac muscle tissue. This is going to be what's responsible for actually pumping of the heart. The endocardium is going to be the innermost layer of the heart. This is going to have a thin lining of the cavities of the heart. It's going to help reduce resistance of blood flow through the heart. So this is going to help keep that blood flowing very smoothly through the heart. Now there's going to be a septum that's going to separate the 2 halves of the heart. Here we have our diagram. Here we have the 2 halves of the heart. We have a left side and a right side. The right side of the heart is going to be pumping blood primarily to the lungs. So think of this, all right, it's a little bit backwards the way you're looking at it, but over here is the right side of the heart. This is going to be the left side of the heart. So think of this, picture this heart on you to help figure out where it's located. Okay, so this is the right side of the heart. It's going to be pumping blood to the lungs. Once it reaches the lungs, we're going to be picking up oxygen, dropping off carbon dioxide, and then heading back towards the heart. The left side is going to be pumping that oxygen-rich blood to the rest of the body. It's going to drop off carbon dioxide and drop off oxygen and pick up carbon dioxide. So here we have oxygen-poor blood. It's going to get pumped out, go to the lungs, pick up oxygen, head back to the heart. Once in the heart, it's going to get pumped out, go to the body, drop off oxygen, bring carbon dioxide back, empty back into the heart, where it's going to pump out, go to the lungs, pick up oxygen, drop off carbon dioxide, come back to the heart, go from the heart to the body, where it's going to drop off oxygen, pick up carbon dioxide, go back to the heart. So the heart, so you can kind of think of it as a figure 8 motion, with the heart being the central point in terms of gaseous exchange. So we're going to start by looking a little bit at the regions of the heart. There are 2 atria and 2 ventricles. 2 atria, these are going to be the upper, smaller chambers of the heart. They're going to have thinner walls, and they're going to be the receiving chambers for blood returning from the heart. So the left atria, so the atria found over here on the left side, is going to be receiving blood from where? This region right here. Very good. This blood is coming from the lungs. It's going to drop down into the ventricle, go out to the body. The right atria, this region over here, is going to be receiving blood from where? Very good. Receiving blood from the body, drop down into the ventricle, pump out to the lungs. So the atria are going to be for receiving the blood returning to the heart, either from the lungs or from the body. The ventricles are going to be responsible for pumping that blood out. So they're going to be the big muscular areas. They're going to have lower, larger chambers. They're going to have very thick muscular walls. They're going to be the main pumps of the heart. They're pushing the blood out of the heart and going to either to the body or to the lungs, depending on what is needed. So here is just a better diagram of those different regions of the heart. Here we have the right atrium, which is receiving blood from the body, dropping down into the right ventricle, going out to the lungs. Once we get the lungs, we're going to pick up oxygen, drop off carbon dioxide. We're going to come back through the left pulmonary veins into the left atrium, drop down into the left ventricle, where we're then going to pump out into the rest of the body. Once we're in the rest of the body, we're going to drop off our drop off our oxygen, pick up our carbon dioxide, come back to the body, to the heart, through the right atrium, drop down into the right ventricle, and pump out to the lungs. So on, so forth, in a never-ending continuous cycle of pumping blood and transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout the body. All right, we're going to spend just a little bit of time looking at those circuits in greater detail. There are 3 circuits of blood flow. First, the pulmonary circuit. The pulmonary circuit is going to be comprised mostly of the parts of the heart on the right side of the heart. These are going to contain very low oxygen in the blood, and we're going to be transporting the blood to and from the lungs. So the pulmonary circuit, we're transporting the blood to the lungs. The systemic circuit is going to be the left side of the heart. This is going to contain blood rich in oxygen, transporting blood to and from the body tissues. And then coronary circulation is actually going to just be nurturing the heart muscle itself. So taking blood from the heart to the heart, keeping the heart focused, keeping the heart going. The heart is actually going to need a ton of oxygen. Why is that? Why would you suppose that the heart is a particular organ that's going to need or have huge oxygen needs? What about the heart and its function would lead you to think that? I'm going to leave that as an open-ended discussion. Here is a diagram that's going to kind of help summarize some of those circuits, showing you where blood is flowing. If you have any questions, please ask, and I will be happy to go through this circuit again. But I just don't want to say too much. I don't want to confuse you, so I'm going to let you spend a little bit of time on your own looking at this diagram and sort of working out the path of the blood system. So we have the systemic circuit. Here we have the sort of the pulmonary circuit, where you can see where the blood is going to be transported from the aorta down into the heart and go back up through the inferior vena cava. So this is how the heart is going to be nourished and provided with blood. If you were to remove all of the muscle tissue from the heart, you would be left with a network that looks a little bit like this. These are going to be all of the arteries and veins and capillaries responsible for nourishing the heart. All right, we're going to watch a quick summary video about these circuits. Oops, here we go.
As mammals, humans have a 4-chambered heart and 2 essentially separate circulatory loops. One is the pulmonary circulation, in which blood flows between the heart and the lungs. The other is the systemic circulation, in which blood circulates between the heart and the rest of the body. Blood that is loaded with oxygen is carried from the lungs to the left atrium, then to the left ventricle to be dispersed to the tissues of the body. Blood depleted of its oxygen is returned to the heart through the vena cava and then to the right atrium and ventricle, where it's sent back to the lungs to be oxygenated again. The exchange of materials between the blood and tissues occurs in the smallest blood vessels of the body, the capillaries. In the pulmonary capillary bed, the deoxygenated blood cell loads oxygen and unloads carbon dioxide. In the systemic capillary bed, oxygen is delivered to the tissues, and carbon dioxide waste from the tissues enters the bloodstream. The vertebrate heart is a muscular pump that provides the force needed to circulate the blood. The human heart has 4 chambers, 2 atria, singular atrium, and 2 ventricles. The atria are thin-walled chambers of muscle that receive blood returning from the lungs and body, and the ventricles are thick-walled muscular chambers that generate the force to pump blood to the lungs and the rest of the tissues of the body. The right atrium receives oxygen-depleted blood through 2 veins called the inferior and superior venae cavae, singular vena cava. When the atria contract, blood in the right atrium is forced into the right ventricle. The right ventricle receives blood from the right atrium and, on contraction, sends this deoxygenated blood to the lungs. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs through 2 veins called the pulmonary veins. The pulmonary veins are the only veins that carry oxygenated blood. When the atria contract, blood in the left atrium is forced into the left ventricle. The left ventricle has the thickest walls of the four chambers. It receives the oxygenated blood from the left atrium and, on contraction, sends it through the aorta to all the tissues of the body. The blood is prevented from flowing backward into the chambers by a system of flap-like valves. The four chambers of the heart alternate between contraction and relaxation in a concerted fashion. This pattern is called the cardiac cycle. A cardiac cycle consists of one complete diastole, the relaxation or expansion phase, and one complete systole or contraction phase. At the start of diastole, the heart muscle is relaxed and blood flows into the atria. Toward the end of diastole, both atria contract simultaneously, followed about 1/10 of a second later by the ventricular contraction. Atrial contraction at the end of diastole helps to fill the ventricles with blood immediately prior to the systole, the phase of the cardiac cycle during which both ventricles contract simultaneously. Step by step, the cycle works like this. Diastole begins when the atria relax and blood flows into the heart. Veins that carry deoxygenated blood from the body fill the right atrium. The left atrium is filled by the pulmonary veins, which carry oxygenated blood from the lungs. The atria are now filled with blood, while the ventricles are still relaxed. Some blood flows passively from the atria to the ventricles at this time. The atria contract, forcing blood into the relaxed ventricles. After contraction, the atrial valves prevent the backflow of blood from the ventricles to the atria. Next, the atria relax and the ventricles contract. Deoxygenated blood is pumped out of the right ventricle into the pulmonary arteries and carried to the lungs, while oxygenated blood is pumped out of the left ventricle through the aorta to the rest of the body. Upon relaxation, the pulmonary and aortic semilunar valves prevent the backflow of blood from the exiting blood vessels to the ventricles. One cardiac cycle is completed in less than 1 second. Blood pressure varies according to the cardiac cycle. The diastolic blood pressure is the lowest pressure, occurring during ventricular relaxation. The systolic blood pressure is the peak pressure, which occurs during ventricular contraction. A stethoscope and sphygmomanometer are routinely used to measure diastolic and systolic pressure. The different sounds heard through the stethoscope, called Korotkov sounds, correspond to the contraction and relaxation of the heart. The cuff is first inflated so that it compresses the brachial artery. The pressure in the cuff is slowly released, and as it descends, it reaches a point where blood is able to spurt through the constricted artery only at the moments of highest blood pressure. This pressure at which tapping sounds are first heard is the systolic pressure, the blood pressure when the heart is contracting. As the pressure in the cuff continues to drop, a point is reached where the sounds disappear. The blood is now flowing continuously through the brachial artery. The pressure in the cuff when the sounds first disappear is the diastolic pressure, the blood pressure when the heart is relaxing. Blood pressure is reported in fractional notation, with systolic pressure as the numerator and diastolic pressure as the denominator. For example, a normal blood pressure might be 120/80 millimeters of mercury.